When a project is in crisis and the team must find a way to still deliver to the originally agreed objectives and goals, then an intervention is needed to correct the project course. Let's review the 7-step process for how to handle crisis projects. Step 1. Admit it. The project manager, sponsor, and sponsoring organization must admit that a crisis has occurred and intervention is required. The project will remain in crisis until the project manager, sponsor, and sponsoring organization admit that the project is in crisis, take responsibility and accountability for it, and that significant assistance is required to correct the project course. It is important to note that this step is often delayed for various reasons, including organizational politics, fear of failure, or denial. This delay typically worsens the crisis. Crisis intervention typically will fail if the CEO or senior executive has not really admitted that intervention is needed and that they're responsible. This is especially so when the public is involved or the media is involved in the crisis situation. The active, visible support from the executives to take accountability and their drive to implement a solution is critical for the ability to correct the crisis situation. The more time and energy expended to fix a crisis project without the proper intervention or without the admittance from senior executives will typically result in just more time and money spent with no resolution. Oftentimes, it takes the external driving force of a client or a key external stakeholder to make an organization realize that intervention is needed or otherwise face cancellation or business shutdown. Step 2. Bring in the experts. Once the sponsoring organization is ready to accept assistance, then assemble and bring in a team of experts in the industry, the business, and project management arena. This team is called the response team. Oftentimes, these individuals are already highly experienced and trained in dealing with crisis projects, as this is an area in project management that has become a sub-industry and skill set of its own. The response team must be full-time dedicated to the project and on-site until such time as the project team can carry on with the new plan. The response team members must be external to the current organization and must be highly respected. Additionally, the response team needs to have an assigned executive as sponsor. This executive needs to be someone with crisis management experience and must be a leader that will get involved in the details as well as the politically charged stakeholder relationships. One of the key responsibilities of this new sponsor is to rebuild stakeholder trust and ensure effective communication with all stakeholders. Step 3. Objective assessment. By this time, the project team is likely exhausted, defensive, and highly emotional, and so is the client. The response team must conduct a quick, objective assessment of the situation using data and information available. Although the assessment is done very quickly, usually within 1 week, it must be extremely thorough. Prioritization of the issues found is critical at this step to ensure the right plan is created. For example, the safety and welfare of others is paramount, so any portion of the project that might endanger anyone's safety would need to be prioritized for correction first. The assessment is shared with the project manager, sponsor, and sponsoring organization, as well as key executives and stakeholders, to ensure that feedback to the assessment and approval of the assessment is obtained. This assessment then becomes the basis for the go-forward recovery plan. All sponsors and stakeholders must be willing to provide support and resources required to correct the situation. Step 4. Document the recovery plan. The response team documents a recovery plan based on the assessment results. The recovery plan must be detailed, include scheduled due dates, responsible resources, and clearly measurable results. As such, the recovery plan is essentially a project that will be initiated to correct the original project that was in crisis. There must be an agreed-to scope, schedule, and budget to carry out the recovery plan as defined. Without this, the recovery plan cannot go forward. Everyone in the organization must understand the recovery plan is the top priority. The recovery plan must contain both immediate actions as well as long-term actions based on the assessment and the prioritization that was conducted. Immediate actions focus on quick actions and communications to complete triage or stopping the bleeding. Long-term actions are focused on the permanent corrections for the project to be able to achieve its original goals and objectives. Each major element of the recovery plan is led by someone on the response team. Step 5. Implement the recovery plan. The response team leads and implements the recovery plan with the aid and assistance of the original project team. Daily status meetings are held with executives and key stakeholders to update the situation, adjust the plan as necessary, and assess progress to the plan. Specific and clear measures are used to evaluate the progress and results. Sufficient budget must be allocated to the plan to allow it to succeed. Step 6. Monitor the recovery plan. At a predefined point in the recovery plan, the response team will transition remaining tasks back to the original sponsoring organization and project team. Depending on the severity of the crisis, this transition may never occur. Weekly monitoring continues with the response team and the project team to ensure the recovery plan is progressing to plan and making appropriate adjustments as necessary. And step 7, lessons learned. As with any project, once the crisis has been averted, then the recovery plan project must be closed. There needs to be a post-project review, complete with lessons learned captured. This post-project review can be conducted by the response team or by the project team with members from the response team present. Some questions to ask in this post-project review are, what were the early warning signs? Could the crisis have been averted, and if so, how? How was the crisis itself managed? Could it have been managed better? And if so, how? These lessons learned are valuable not only for the project that suffered through the crisis, but it helps others to learn how to avoid a similar fate.